Fact 25. The Arctic Ocean is the smallest and shallowest ocean. The Arctic Ocean covers only 5.4 million square miles, making it the smallest of the 5 oceans. The average depth is just 3,953 feet, far shallower than other oceans. Much of the Arctic Ocean sits on vast continental shelves, extending from surrounding land masses. The shallow depth means the ocean freezes more easily than deeper oceans. During winter, sea ice covers most of the Arctic Ocean, creating a frozen lid over the water. The shallow continental shelves contain massive oil and gas deposits that nations compete to claim. The Arctic Ocean's small size and shallow depth make it uniquely vulnerable to climate change and human exploitation. Fact 24. The North Pole has no land beneath it. Unlike the South Pole, which sits on the Antarctic continent, the North Pole is simply floating sea ice over 13,000 feet of ocean. There is no land at the geographic North Pole, just frozen water drifting with ocean currents. The ice at the pole is typically 6 to 9 feet thick, floating on the Arctic Ocean. Because the ice drifts, the actual North Pole location moves constantly relative to the ice. Submarines can surface at the North Pole by breaking through the ice from below. The lack of land makes the North Pole fundamentally different from the South Pole geographically and legally. No country can claim the North Pole because it's international waters covered by drifting ice. Fact 23. Greenland is not actually green. Greenland is 80% covered by ice sheet up to 10,000 feet thick. The island was named by Eric the Red around 985 CE to attract settlers, making it history's first real estate scam. Only the coastal edges are ice-free and capable of supporting vegetation. The Greenland ice sheet contains 10% of the world's freshwater locked in ice. If the entire ice sheet melted, global sea levels would rise 24 feet, flooding coastlines worldwide. Greenland's interior is actually a frozen desert that receives minimal precipitation. The island is a giant ice cap with a thin green fringe along the coasts. Fact 22. The Arctic has midnight sun and polar night. North of the Arctic Circle, the sun doesn't set for weeks to months during summer. At the North Pole, the sun stays above the horizon continuously for 6 months. Conversely, during winter, the sun doesn't rise for an equal period, creating polar night. The extreme day and night cycles result from Earth's axial tilt of 23.5 degrees. Plants and animals have adapted to these extreme light conditions with unique biological rhythms. Humans living in the Arctic often experience seasonal affective disorder due to the darkness. The midnight sun and polar night define life at the top of the world. Fact 21. The Arctic is warming twice as fast as the rest of Earth. Arctic temperatures are rising at more than double the global average, a phenomenon called Arctic amplification. The region has warmed about 3 degrees Celsius since 1980, while the global average increased only 1 degree Celsius. The amplification occurs because melting ice exposes dark ocean water that absorbs heat instead of reflecting it. This feedback loop accelerates warming in a vicious cycle. Summer sea ice has declined by 40% since satellite records began in 1979. The Arctic is experiencing climate change faster and more dramatically than anywhere else on Earth. Scientists predict ice-free Arctic summers could occur by 2050. Fact 20. Permafrost contains twice the carbon in the atmosphere. Arctic permafrost holds an estimated 1,600 billion tons of carbon, more than double what's currently in Earth's atmosphere. This carbon is locked in frozen organic matter that accumulated over thousands of years. As permafrost thaws, microbes decompose the organic material, releasing carbon dioxide and methane. The thawing permafrost creates a massive feedback loop that accelerates global warming. Some areas are already releasing significant amounts of greenhouse gases as permafrost collapses. The Arctic permafrost is a climate time bomb that threatens to release enough carbon to dramatically accelerate climate change. Once the thawing begins, it becomes self-perpetuating and extremely difficult to stop. Fact 19. The Arctic Ocean could be ice-free in summer within decades. Scientists predict the Arctic Ocean will experience ice-free summers by mid-century if current trends continue. Ice-free means less than 1 million square kilometers of ice remaining, concentrated near Greenland and Canada. The loss of summer sea ice will fundamentally transform Arctic ecosystems and weather patterns. Polar bears, seals, and other ice-dependent species face extinction without summer sea ice. The open water will allow increased shipping through the Northwest Passage and Northern Sea Route. Ice-free summers represent a geographic transformation that hasn't occurred in at least 3 million years. The Arctic Ocean is transitioning from a frozen sea to a seasonal ocean like the North Atlantic. Fact 18. Svalbard is the northernmost permanent settlement on Earth. Longyearbyen in Svalbard, Norway, sits at 78 degrees north latitude with about 2,000 permanent residents. The settlement is closer to the North Pole than to mainland Norway. Svalbard experiences 4 months of total darkness and 4 months of midnight sun annually. The permafrost is so stable that Svalbard hosts the global seed vault, storing backup seeds from every crop on Earth. The settlement exists primarily because of coal mining and now tourism and research. Despite the extreme location, Svalbard has hotels, restaurants, and even a university center. The town demonstrates that humans can establish permanent communities in the high Arctic. Fact 17. The Northwest Passage was a deadly obsession for centuries. European explorers spent 400 years searching for a northern sea route through the Canadian Arctic. The Franklin expedition of 1845 vanished completely, with all 129 men dying in the ice. The passage wasn't successfully navigated until 1906 by Roald Amundsen, taking 3 years. The route claimed dozens of ships and hundreds of lives over centuries of attempts. Climate change is now opening the Northwest Passage for regular shipping during summer months. What was once impossible geography is becoming a viable shipping route. The passage that killed so many is now melting into accessibility. Fact 16. Arctic sea ice is disappearing at 13% per decade. Satellite data shows Arctic sea ice is declining at 13% per decade, relative to the 1981 to 2010 average. The oldest, thickest ice is disappearing fastest, replaced by thinner, seasonal ice. The Arctic has lost about 75% of its summer sea ice volume since 1979. The rate of ice loss is accelerating, exceeding most scientific predictions from just a decade ago. September ice extent has dropped from 7 million square kilometers to about 4.5 million. The ice is disappearing faster than almost any climate model predicted. The Arctic is transforming before our eyes as a defining geographic feature vanishes. Fact 15. Glaciers are retreating throughout the Arctic. Greenland's glaciers are losing 280 billion tons of ice annually, contributing significantly to sea level rise. Some glaciers are retreating several miles per decade, exposing land that hasn't been ice-free in thousands of years. Jakobshavn Glacier in Greenland is one of the fastest-moving glaciers, flowing at speeds up to 150 feet per day. The retreat exposes unstable mountainsides prone to massive landslides. Glacial meltwater is freshening the North Atlantic, potentially disrupting ocean currents. The retreat is creating new fjords and bays as ice that filled valleys for millennia disappears. Arctic glaciers are the fastest melting ice masses on Earth outside Antarctica. If you're shocked by these facts, hit subscribe. There's more coming. Fact 14. The Arctic has oil and gas that nations fight over. The Arctic contains an estimated 90 billion barrels of oil and 30% of the world's undiscovered natural gas. These resources are becoming accessible as sea ice retreats, triggering territorial disputes. Russia, Canada, Denmark, Norway, and the United States all claim overlapping Arctic territories. The potential wealth has militarized the Arctic as nations establish bases and conduct exercises. The seafloor contains vast hydrocarbon deposits on continental shelves extending from each Arctic nation. Extracting these resources in extreme Arctic conditions presents enormous technical and environmental challenges. The Arctic is becoming a resource frontier as melting ice reveals riches that were previously inaccessible. Fact 13. Polar bears are marine mammals, not land animals. Polar bears spend most of their lives on sea ice hunting seals and are classified as marine mammals. The bears can swim continuously for days, covering over 400 miles across open water. They hunt primarily at the ice edge, where seals surface to breathe. As sea ice disappears, polar bears are forced onto land where food is scarce. The bears are starving as their hunting platform literally melts away. Some populations have declined by 40% as sea ice retreats earlier each spring. Polar bears face extinction within the century as their habitat disappears. The species evolved for life on sea ice and cannot adapt to ice-free summers. Fact 12. The Arctic tundra is transforming into shrubland. As temperatures warm, shrubs and small trees are colonizing Arctic tundra that was previously too cold for woody plants. This greening of the Arctic is visible in satellite imagery across Alaska, Canada, and Siberia. The vegetation change alters albedo, with darker plants absorbing more heat than light-colored tundra. The transformation affects caribou and other herbivores that depend on tundra plants. The expanding shrubland creates new fire risk in a region that historically didn't burn. The tundra biome is shifting northward as the tree line advances. The Arctic landscape is fundamentally changing as warming allows vegetation to colonize formerly barren ground. Fact 11. Methane bubbles up from thawing Arctic seafloors. Methane trapped in frozen sediments beneath the Arctic Ocean is being released as waters warm. The seafloor contains vast methane hydrate deposits that remain stable only under cold, high-pressure conditions. Scientists have documented massive methane plumes bubbling from the seafloor off Siberia and Alaska. Some areas show seafloor craters from explosive methane releases. Methane is 25 times more potent as a greenhouse gas than carbon dioxide over a century. The release of Arctic seafloor methane could accelerate warming dramatically. The amount of methane stored in Arctic seafloor sediments is staggering and poorly quantified. Fact 10. Indigenous peoples have lived in the Arctic for thousands of years. The Inuit, Sami, Nenets, and other indigenous groups have inhabited the Arctic for over 4,000 years. These peoples developed technologies and knowledge to survive in Earth's harshest environment. Traditional knowledge of ice conditions, animal behavior, and weather patterns allowed survival where others perished. Indigenous Arctic communities now face existential threats as climate change destroys their environment. Traditional hunting grounds are disappearing as ice retreats and animal populations shift. Many Arctic indigenous languages and cultures are endangered as communities are forced to relocate. The people who mastered Arctic geography are now being displaced by its rapid transformation. Fact 9. The Arctic Ocean's salinity is changing dramatically. Massive freshwater input from melting glaciers and sea ice is reducing Arctic Ocean salinity. The ocean's surface layer is becoming significantly fresher, affecting ocean circulation patterns. Freshwater is less dense than saltwater and tends to form a stable layer on top. This stratification prevents mixing and affects nutrient distribution and marine ecosystems. The freshening Arctic Ocean could disrupt the Atlantic meridional overturning circulation that moderates European climate. Changes in salinity represent a fundamental alteration of Arctic Ocean chemistry and physics. The ocean is literally becoming a different body of water as ice melts and rivers increase flow. Fact 8. Thermokarst lakes are appearing across the Arctic. As permafrost thaws, The ground collapses, creating thermokarst lakes filled with meltwater. These lakes are appearing by the thousands across Alaska, Siberia, and Canada as warming accelerates. The lakes accelerate permafrost thawing by warming the ground beneath them. Some lakes drain suddenly when permafrost barriers collapse, releasing water and methane. The expanding lakes create unstable ground that threatens infrastructure and communities. Thermokarst lakes are transforming Arctic landscapes from solid tundra to waterlogged terrain. The phenomenon represents visible evidence of permafrost collapse happening in real time. Fact 7. The Northern Sea Route is opening for shipping. The Northern Sea Route along Russia's Arctic coast is becoming navigable for longer periods each year. The route reduces shipping distance from Europe to Asia by 40% compared to the Suez Canal. Commercial shipping through the route has increased dramatically as ice cover declines. Russia is developing port infrastructure and icebreaker fleets to capitalize on the opening route. The route could revolutionize global trade if it becomes reliably ice-free. What was once impossible geography is becoming a major shipping corridor. The opening represents one of the most significant geographic changes in modern times. Fact 6. Arctic wildfires are increasing dramatically. Wildfires in the Arctic have increased in frequency, intensity, and duration as temperatures rise. Alaska, northern Canada, and Siberia experience massive fires that burn tundra and boreal forest. Some fires burn into permafrost and peat, releasing ancient carbon. Arctic fires in 2019 and 2020 were unprecedented, burning millions of acres. The fires create feedback loops by darkening snow with ash, reducing albedo. Smoke from Arctic fires affects air quality across entire continents. The Arctic is transitioning from a region that rarely burned to one experiencing regular massive wildfires. Fact 5. The Arctic is home to unique marine life, found nowhere else. The Arctic supports species specifically adapted to extreme cold and seasonal ice. Narwhals, belugas, and bowhead whales live exclusively in Arctic waters. Arctic cod provide the foundation of the marine food web, feeding seals, whales, and seabirds. These species evolved for ice-covered conditions and cannot survive in warmer waters. As the Arctic warms, temperate species are moving north, competing with Arctic specialists. The unique Arctic marine ecosystem is being invaded by species from the south. The Arctic Ocean is losing its distinct biological character as warming allows non-Arctic species to colonize. Fact 4. Russia has 53% of the Arctic coastline. Russia's northern coast stretches over 15,000 miles along the Arctic Ocean, far more than any other nation. This gives Russia enormous influence over Arctic geography and resources. The Russian Arctic contains most of the nation's resource wealth, including oil, gas, and minerals. Russia has established military bases throughout its Arctic territory, reopening Cold War installations. The country operates the world's largest icebreaker fleet to maintain access. Russia views the Arctic as strategically vital and economically essential. The nation's geographic position makes it the dominant Arctic power by sheer coastline length. Fact 3. The Arctic has unique light phenomena. The Arctic experiences aurora borealis when solar particles interact with Earth's magnetic field near the poles. The dancing lights appear in green, red, purple, and blue across the night sky. The auroras are most visible during the dark winter months at high latitudes. Other optical phenomena include sundogs, light pillars, and halos caused by ice crystals in the air. The Arctic's clear, cold air creates ideal conditions for these displays. The unique light phenomena result from the Arctic's geographic position near Earth's magnetic pole. These displays have captivated observers for millennia. Fact 2. Melting Arctic ice affects weather worldwide. The disappearing Arctic ice is disrupting the jet stream, causing extreme weather across the northern hemisphere. The reduced temperature difference between Arctic and mid-latitudes weakens the jet stream. A weaker jet stream meanders more, bringing Arctic air south and warm air north. This creates the extreme weather events like polar vortex intrusions and heat waves. Scientists link the melting Arctic to droughts, floods, and temperature extremes thousands of miles away. Changes in Arctic geography are affecting weather patterns across North America, Europe, and Asia. The Arctic doesn't stay in the Arctic. Changes there ripple across the planet. Fact 1. The Arctic will be unrecognizable by 2100. Current projections indicate the Arctic will undergo complete transformation by century's end. Year-round sea ice will likely disappear, creating a seasonally ice-free ocean. Permafrost will thaw across vast areas, releasing greenhouse gases and destabilizing ground. Arctic ecosystems will shift dramatically as temperate species replace Arctic specialists. Coastal communities will face erosion and flooding as protective ice disappears. The geography, climate, and ecology of the Arctic will be fundamentally altered. The Arctic as we know it, a frozen wilderness at the top of the world, is disappearing, replaced by a warmer, ice-free ocean surrounded by thawed tundra. The transformation represents one of the most dramatic geographic changes in Earth's recent history, happening within a single human lifetime.